Good evening. It is now 6:30, and I will call to order the Monday, February 8th, 2016 Burnsville Planning Commission. Commissioners, thank you for attending this evening. Staff, thank you very much for coming. First item on our agenda is actually the adoption of the agenda. And does anyone have any changes to the posted agenda? None?
Not sure.
Staff, any changes to the agenda this evening? No?
No.
Okay. With that, I would stand for a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Benke,
Second.
second by Commissioner Workman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. Our second item this evening is the approval of the minutes from the January 11th, 2016 Planning Commission. Commissioners, do you have any changes to the posted minutes from the January 11th meeting? None from commissioners? Did you, none?
None.
Staff?
None.
With none, I would also stand for a motion for approval of the minutes. Moved by Commissioner Thomas, second by Commissioner Singh. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. The third item on this evening's agenda is a public hearing application for Kramer Mining Materials, or KMM, for a planned unit development amendment to address the final mining boundary and edge treatments for the quarry located at 1020 Cliff Road. This item, the applicant has asked for a continuance and moved to the February 22nd meeting. However, the meeting was advertised, so we're going to open the public hearing and ask anybody that's in the audience that wishes to speak to it. And then we will leave the public hearing open until the 22nd. So with that said, I will open the public hearing for Kramer Mining Materials for a planned unit amendment for 1020 Cliff Road, and ask anybody in the audience who would wish to speak to this item to step up and give us your thoughts. Seeing no one running to the podium, we will continue this to our February 22nd meeting. So, Commissioners, at least we know we have one thing to do on the 22nd. The fourth item this evening is also a public hearing with Semstone Products Company for a planned unit development amendment and floodplain conditional use permit to construct a fourth building at the concrete processing operation located at 2300 Cliff Road West. And our presenter this evening is Ms. Garros. Ms. Garros, you have the floor.
Thank you. The subject site that we are discussing this evening is part of the larger Kramer Mining and Materials property. It is a subject site that is located on Cliff Road West. You can see by the graphic above, the property is zoned I-2, which is our general industrial zoning and planned unit development. The project itself for Kramer Mining and Materials, the entire mining operation, actually the landfill that's existing out there, including the Semstone site, that has conditional use permit approval dating back to the mid-1960s. In the mid-1990s, 1995, that's when KMM was issued or approved for a planned unit development that includes the landfill and the quarry, and then an additional off-site project as well. And this PUD remains in effect for the entire Kramer property. Since that PUD was approved, KMM sold the landfill to Waste Management, so that is now operated and known as Burnsville Sanitary Landfill, Inc., operated by Waste Management, but it is also subject to some of the similar PUD conditions and has its own as well. As far as the Semstone site, I just wanted to give you an overview of the property. This site is located within the Minnesota River Quadrant that, for references for the public and the commissioners, is really everything, most of everything north of Highway 13 and west of Interstate 35W. On the graphic, at about midpoint is Cliff Road West. That is a private street that will become public at some point in time once the landfill operation and the quarry are complete and the actual development plans come through fruition for those properties. But right now, Cliff Road West in the vicinity of Semstone is a private street. Semstone operates under a planned unit development which was approved in the early 2000s, and that was to allow the batch processing plant. And they basically take and work with materials that are quarried or from the quarry. It's a ready mix cement processing facility. There are a number of buildings and operations on site. Semstone has owned it. They lease the property from Kramer Mining and Materials, and the way that the approvals are set up is that at the time that the quarry closes, it's intended that the Semstone obviously would close as well, because there wouldn't be any more materials basically to utilize in their business. In addition to Semstone, just northwest of the site is the compost facility, and then we reference in the staff report directly west is the gas to electricity plant, where the landfill has infrastructure that basically collects methane gas, and then it's transferred to electricity at this plant. The use actually is tied to the landfill, but it's on property also owned by Kramer Mining and Materials. So the site that we are dealing with this evening is the site at 2300 Cliff Road West, and this is about a 6-acre site that KMM leases to Semstone. What they are requesting is there is on the southwest part of the site, there is an existing trailer, which is a non-conforming use. And what Semstone would like to do is they would like to construct an 864 square foot building to replace that trailer. And primarily, the building would be used for their existing drivers for Semstone. There would not be any additional employees associated with this project. The site is not accessed by the general public. It is basically a service site, and this building would provide the opportunity for some seating, a small kitchenette, some meeting space, and then also some storage and mechanical space as well. The benefits to the PUD are that, number one, we have a non-conforming trailer that will be removed from the site and then replaced with a building that conforms with the PUD and then also the ordinance. There are some deviations that are needed, but two of the deviations are items that the ordinance allows for. It's just that you do need to go through a conditional use permit or planned unit development in order to do them. That would be, number one, to allow more than one building on the lot. This is allowed with a PUD, and that's basically what this request is for. This would be the fourth building on the site. And then number two, to allow precast concrete wall panels as their exterior panel or wall system on the building. This is, again, something that's allowed with a PUD. It's also consistent with what the other buildings have been constructed with also for the Semstone site. And the third item is to allow 38 as opposed to 50% of the proposed building to be landscaped. And this is an existing condition, so staff is recommending that we do allow the deviation in this case. Again, just briefly, you can see this graphic shows the overall Kramer Quarry site, and at the very bottom left-hand side is the Semstone operation, which is this 6-acre site here. And in terms of the site itself, the primary plant location, the batch plant, is the central part of the site. And then they have a smaller building up on the northeast corner, the northwest corner, and this would be the fourth building that's proposed in this location here. In terms of the site itself, it has been in operation since the mid-2000s, and the property is really well established in terms of landscaping, screening, etc. If we go back On the site plan, all along Cliff Road, I can get my, all along Cliff Road here, there is a 4-foot berm, and there's also very mature evergreens. There's also additional landscaping that's provided near the entrances on both ends of the site and in here, and then some additional tree cover. It's hard to see on this particular aerial photo, but there is existing tree cover. I believe that their first application called for 95 plus or minus trees, and really the landscaping is still existing on the property. Again, it's somewhat difficult to see by this graphic, but there is also landscaping that's installed around the main building. This building has got green space, and then also there's the 50% green space in this area. In this location, they're not proposing to remove or create any additional impervious surface. What they're proposing to do is to construct the building on the existing paved parking surface, and the proposal then would be to allow for the existing green space, which would be on the south side. That's shy of the 50% of the building, but also they're not making any changes to the parking lot itself. So staff feels that this is something that is workable with this plan unit development. The other part of the application is a conditional use permit, and that's to allow the filling or the material that's needed to bring the building up to an elevation that conforms to the FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency floodplain requirements for the Minnesota River. Part of the site, a good part of the site is actually very close to the floodplain elevation. When the initial conditional use permit was approved for this other building and the adjacent buildings, there were requirements or conditions that they need to provide that the property is elevated to meet the FEMA requirements, and also that the building is constructed as well to do that. Staff is recommending a condition that also be applied to this particular application, and they have indeed shown on their plans that the proposed elevations do meet the FEMA requirements for the project site. In terms of the footprint and the floor plan, you can see it's fairly simple, really just restrooms, a small dinette, place for people to sit and eat lunch, and then the mechanical storage area here. For this building, the front of the building will actually face to the north. It will not face to Cliff Road. The entire south side of the building, which is considered their back of their building, is fully screened by the existing berm and tree cover. The proposal is a very simple prefabricated concrete building. It is consistent with the other buildings that have been approved on the site, in a tan color with a blue stripe on the building, and some blue around the rooftop material as well. They did provide an example of a similar structure that was just proposed in Dayton, Minnesota, and you can see that this is very similar to what's out there existing on the site in Burnsville as well. In terms of parking, the site actually exceeds the parking requirements and also provides for the loading requirements for a building of this size. It does meet the ordinance. In the original PUD, they did an analysis of parking and found that at that point in time, 19 spaces were needed on site. There are a number of spaces that are provided around or adjacent to the new building. These are basically employee parking spaces. There's some employee parking spaces by the main plant building. And then also there is a partial road that is also on the Kramer property, and this does include parallel parking spaces. The areas shown in blue are where the trucks, the Simstone trucks, actually park within the site. And again, there are no changes that are proposed with this application. We just wanted them to identify what the existing conditions were to have that as part of the record for the project. The recommendation from staff is to consider approval for both the PUD amendment and the floodplain conditional use permit, subject to the 3 conditions that are identified in the report, and that be that all previously approved PUD conditional use permit and term use permit items remain in full force and effect for this site. Number 2, that the buildings and facilities associated with Semstone shall be removed from the site within 1 year after the date of the quarry closing. This is a condition, it's a little bit more detailed than the 2003 condition, which just said at the time of closing. We just thought it would make more sense to indicate that at some point the quarry is going to close, and then to give a specific time frame to allow them to remove the buildings from the site. So it's much the same, but a little bit more specific. And then number 3 is our standard FEMA condition requiring that prior to issuing a certificate of occupancy, they provide an elevation certificate, and as constructed plans would need to be submitted, and we need to keep those on file to meet our obligations and reporting for FEMA. And with that, I know that the applicant is here. If there are any questions, I can stand for questions as well.
Thank you, Ms. Garros. I'd like to just confirm the condition number 2, the 1 year, that's identical to what we've done for several other applicants in the MRQ, correct? With the 1 year once the closing? Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, I
Fairly
just wanted
standard,
to
yes.
clarify that. Commissioners, what questions do you have for Ms. Garros? Commissioner Levy.
And recommendation 2, thank you, Mr. Chair. We state 1 year after. Hypothetically, economy goes bad, the company goes out. Who's responsible for removing those structures if things don't work right for the company?
Would be the property owner is responsible for that ultimately.
That's KMM then?
Correct.
Okay. Commissioner Levy, any other questions?
Okay, that was it, thank you.
Commissioner Benke. Sorry, did I miss you first?
No,
Oh,
no,
okay.
no,
I
decided to wait.
I saw his finger first.
No, no. I think I'm looking at the same thing. You know, we have a cement building here, which is essentially permanent. And I guess, is there any rationale why a cement building on ground was chosen to, and it has to be dealt with the floodplain where, you know, perhaps a less permanent structure above ground might not have had to do that? Was there any considerations that way, or?
I can let the applicant address that, but basically, they have a site, and I think they want to have something that's a little bit more comfortable to be in,
Sure.
aside from just a trailer
Sure.
that they currently have. But all of the buildings, really, the intent of this, even though we look at things in terms of what's long-term, short-term, et cetera, realistically, this is an interim type approval.
Right.
How many years the quarry goes, that we don't know.
Right.
But that's one of the reasons that it was approved originally, and then that we support the application as is from a staff standpoint for this as well.
Let me move on to a few other.
Sir, hang on,
All right.
let me make sure we got all of Deb's questions, and then I'll get right back to you. Thank you.
That was sort of my next thing, and again, back to recommendation number 2. You know, this talks about removal with one year after the date closes. You know, clearly, things have already backed up from what was talked about when MRQ started. Can you go back to the Burnsville Quarry plan?
Oops. Am I going the wrong way?
Preview there.
Going the wrong way. I hope I can.
Now Regina's presentation is not a secret
I
anymore.
did. Let's go over. Right. Where did it go?
It's in the
Oh,
ether.
here we go, okay.
That one, yes. Okay, so we have active quarry area. What is main reserve area?
Actually, the other application that was continued really deals with that. In 1995, what they identified is kind of the ultimate area for where they would be able to take material from.
Sure.
And the active indicates where There's current processing taking place, and there is some area that is still in reserve that's not being actively mined, but that they can mine.
Sure.
So that is what that represents. And actually, this is from 2000, so the actual conditions have changed since this.
Sure.
This is merely kind of to show you in respect to the quarry where the Semstone facility is.
Okay, I guess where I was going with that is that we still have what pretty much is a fairly long-term job for them to continue to mine.
We don't really know the dates. The applicant is looking, and this is something that will come up at your next meeting, is looking to modify those lines to which they can do the active quarrying. And it's our understanding, at least initially, that what they're looking at is actually mining more to the west and leaving more to the east, which is the developable part of the site. So it may actually be looking at possibly doing some development before the quarry actually closes.
Okay, then if you could go to the, actually, why don't we go down to the site plan that shows the one with the parking?
Oh, parking lot, okay.
So the building is pretty much right in the middle of the pink?
This is the building right here.
Sure.
I don't know if you can see
And
it.
then,
Yep.
so they
And
removed
then they
part,
have some parking here and some parking here. They're not really removing anything. They just identified that these would be striped spots
Okay.
for their
Okay.
parking.
and then if you go to your development summary chart, I guess I'm trying to understand that. The building area existing says 7,640 square feet, and the
Yes.
proposed says 14,524, yet this building is only 864 square feet.
Could be that I have bad math skills.
Didn't want to, I just wondered, it didn't match.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not even like you
It's
transposed
my math
this-
skills. No,
Oh,
no.
so are we
It's
at
80, it'd be more closer to the 8,500,
square feet?
yeah.
So, okay, so this is the total building on the site is 8,500 square feet
Yep,
roughly.
approximately, yes.
Makes sense.
Okay,
Yep.
that was all I found.
You still have a question for the applicant?
We do.
If you could, please step up to the podium and give us your name and your address for the record.
Alex Oline, 2025 Center Point Boulevard, Mendota Heights, Minnesota.
Thank you for coming. Commissioner Benke.
Just basically a little bit of background as to the choice of building type.
We make the concrete panels ourselves, so it's cost effective for us to do it that way.
I sort of figured that was going to be the answer, but I just wanted to hear it.
Yep, and this is our standard driver's building that we put up at a lot of our plants. It's just more efficient for us to heat and cool,
Absolutely.
so.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Appreciate your time.
Thanks.
This is a public hearing, so at this point, I will open the public hearing and invite anyone in the audience who wishes to speak to this applicant to step up and to the podium and give us your thoughts. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, unless anyone has any additional questions, I would stand for a motion. Commissioner Singh, I'm sorry.
I have a question, just a clarification.
Oh, okay. I apologize.
Ms.
sir.
Garris, in your report, you mentioned that there is a storm water pond.
Yes.
Now, can you identify for me where that pond is?
Yes. It is located up north, the north
Okay.
part of the site here. And I think you can see it on the graphic, you can see it a little bit.
Yes.
Right in through here.
Now, will this pond impact water from the entire 6-acre plot?
The entire 6-acre area, what currently flows to to that stormwater pond is taken care of. And because they're not creating any additional impervious, it will continue to serve what's needed for stormwater management on the site.
My question was, I was wondering about the adequacy, whether it was adequate for the entire 6-acre plot. So,
Yes.
okay. I have one other question. Since this is being done in an industrial zone, it's right, that's an industrial zone.
Yes.
I think we have to meet 3 of the requirements, and we have
Yes.
met those 3, the application has met those 3 requirements.
Yes.
Okay, great. Just want to make sure that it's done, so. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Singh. Commissioners, any other questions? Commissioner Thomas?
If you're ready for a motion?
I am.
I am. I would like to move that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council approval of the PUD amendment and floodplain CUP to allow for construction of the proposed building subject to the following 3 conditions listed in the planning report.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Benke. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much. That will go to the City Council on February 16th.
Next week.
Thank you for coming. And I appreciate you continuing to invest in Burnsville. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks for that great overview picture. I mean, that really helped sort of set the stage.
Our 5th item this evening is a public hearing application for Costco for a planned unit development amendment for an expansion to the existing liquor store at 14050 Burnhaven Drive. And our planner this evening is Regina Jean. Thank you, Regina, for coming this evening. And you have the floor.
Thank you. Planning Chair, members of the commission. We do have Costco Representative Chris Call here to answer any questions at the end of the presentation. Costco is proposing a plan unit development amendment. They currently have a plan unit development amendment for the site, and they are proposing an addition to their existing building for their liquor store. So that, again, triggers a plan unit development amendment. This is a public hearing for the property, again, like you stated, at 14050 Burnhaven Drive. This is the proposed, or actually, this is the location of the existing Costco that many of you are, I'm sure, familiar with. It was approved back in 2010 for approximately 160,000 square feet. There was a subsequent PUD amendment for outdoor sales display of a vehicle in the front of the store. And then, as early as August of 2015, another planning and development amendment for a canopy expansion that is yet to be built. The surrounding area is residential to the north, and surrounding to the south, southwest, and east is B3, also PUD, very commercial in nature. Again, the proposed addition, approximately 5,100 square feet. This would double the size of the existing liquor store. It's located on the west side of the building, and it would occupy approximately 12 parking spaces in that location. Again, here's the site plan that shows the proposed addition. Moving to the architecture, the proposed addition generally be located here. They're continuing very similar materials, concrete masonry unit on the bottom, which is a rose bluff type color. Above that would be a textured panel. They're adding an element, they're bringing the columns and pillars, sort of a canopy, forward to help address the building, to help address adding a building break. City code requires that every 100 feet that there's some type of relief or architectural feature, so they're bringing that forward. Their initial proposal showed the liquor store basically continuing the same look that you see on the north part of the existing liquor sales area. They're also continuing the red stripe that you see. And they're also proposing to move the sign to the building addition. The sign would be reduced in size from what you see existing. It would still be lit with external illumination with the gooseneck lighting. And the actual light, or the actual signage would be individual channel letters, and they would be 2 inches thick. There are some PUD deviations requested. Staff feels that they're minor in nature, and we can support all of them. The first deviation is a reduction in the parking that was approved at the 2010 PUD approval from 673 parking spaces to 660 parking stalls. Costco, just as a note, their parking spaces are larger than the typical parking stalls. So if parking did become an issue in the future, they could potentially restripe the parking lot to help accommodate that. And to date, parking has not been an issue on the site, so staff felt it was reasonable to support that PUD deviation. There is also a request for reduction in the pervious surface or green space for the site from 21.95% to 19.5%. Staff felt that we could support this deviation as well. It's pretty minor in nature. And if they were to add any green space that might occupy parking, again, as a proposed, we want to see balance within the site and not cause additional deviations. Another deviation requested is a reduction in the building perimeter landscaping from 50% to 38%. City code requires a 50%. The actual building perimeter landscaping that's on site right now is about 41%. So again, we felt this was a pretty minor reduction or deviation. And the last deviation requested is from an increase of 4 wall signs to 5 wall signs. The actual signage number may be increased because of the liquor sales sign. However, the overall square footage in signage is reduced. So staff felt that was reasonable. We are recommending a couple of conditions, pretty standard conditions, as part of the approval. All conditions of any previous PUD should or shall remain in full force and effect. There is, to note, a temporary metal snow equipment storage building that's located on the south portion of the property near the loading dock area. The applicant has agreed to remove that prior to building permit issuance for the addition, if approved. And all signage would require a building permit or a sign permit prior to installation. Oops. So with that, Planning Commission has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you, Ms. Dean. I appreciate your presentation. Commissioners, questions for Ms. Dean? Commissioner Workman.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Dean, for the presentation. Do we know, was this expansion always part of the original plan when the liquor store went in? Do we know, or maybe I could ask the applicant that when he comes up?
I don't think it was envisioned. What I've heard from the architect that's not here tonight is that liquor store sales in Minnesota, generally speaking, for Costco have been through the roof. And to accommodate their customers' needs, the expansion was warranted. And they're seeing that throughout the entire Twin Cities.
Okay.
Just one comment, I think I was here when we did that. PUD, and it was not in that original plan. Of course, the sales is the driving force behind, I think, what's happening here with this application for the extension.
Commissioner Workman, you have another question?
Yeah, but I've got one more concern about the parking, and I know you touched on that not being an issue, but I did see something in the report about how we're removing 12 spots, but with this expansion, there should have been 23 additional spots made based on the square footage. We just switched to Costco, and so I was there on Saturday, and it was pretty hectic. My only concern would be that the parking, and it's only 12 spots, and we can see there's plenty there, but with snow removal, where do we place the snow in the wintertime that's taking up spots? Is this something that we could see a problem with down the line?
From a staff standpoint, we saw that this was an area of the site that does not usually park customers or isn't used for customers or employees. The liquor store is expanding and giving more variety or more choice to the customer, but not necessarily driving more customers to the location. So it's offering, maybe double the beer choices, double the wine choices, but not necessarily increasing customer base or membership attendance.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Workman. Commissioner Levy?
On the image you had of the color image of the, below that you've got, there's the existing and there's the proposed, and is the proposed that different, or is it just shown there to highlight where the new part is?
It's, if you can imagine, it's basically bringing that same look forward or further west that you see, rather than continuing that similar wall plane that the existing liquor store has. So it's bringing this look here forward to this wall plane to help break up.
I see across the bottom of the whole image is more, I don't know if it's a gray or a light tan coloration, and then in the addition, it's a much darker. Is it going to be darker, or is that there just to highlight the new area?
It will be the same color as
Okay.
existing on site today. I think the photo versus the color rendering, sometimes when you print images and take photos of them and then put them in a slideshow, sometimes they don't always match, but the proposed colors are to match the same.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Levy. Commissioner Banky?
I didn't raise my hand, but you knew. Yeah, having the.
I sensed you were going to raise your hand.
Well, having the new construction highlighted is a pretty standard architectural practice.
Okay.
So, do we know, going back to the pumps, didn't we reduce some parking for the pumps as well?
No, we did not.
There was no parking reduction for adding the
No.
pumps.
Initially, staff had suggested that reduction, but that's when they were going to be pushing the canopy addition further to the west.
Okay.
And instead, they revised their plans and did it to the east, so they did
That
not end
was-
up taking in any
Okay,
parking.
so
So,
So that didn't,
space.
right. Okay. I'm struggling trying to decipher where the textural change that's shown on the architectural plans, how that actually occurs. The plan provided, I'm just looking at the larger scale plan, it pretty much shows the existing liquor sales and the expansion in the same plane. And I'm struggling trying to see how we get the texture that's shown here and where the columns and the trellis, et cetera, are showing.
Let's see if it would-
Is it, maybe there's a better plan to reference. I'm looking at the preliminary site plan right now.
Right, so basically right here, can you see the arrow on your screens?
Right.
This is the general area where the columns or pillars and the canopy would be located here.
Okay.
And that's approximately at the midpoint of the addition, or the midpoint of that wall plane.
Okay, and when okay, I'm going to back up because, quite honestly, I see the addition as great. I see how it's being handled as nice. The fact that they're taking the time to put the textural change in place, I think, is really good, and obviously it follows the ordinance. But the realization of it, I'm not really seeing here right now. It still appears that we have one continuous plane. And like I say, I'm just not sure on the plan how they're getting, I'm not sure on the plan here, the building plan, how they're getting that look. I'm basically not seeing anything on the plan that represents the elevation changes that are shown there, at least nothing that I can see. I'm also looking at this, and this image appears to be, the upper one appears to be the older existing building, because you can sort of see how the white element turns the corner and goes back. Where, on here it's being presented as all just one plane.
The upper image is the existing conditions,
Okay.
and then the lower,
Okay, so that's where the confusion came in. So existing conditions has the Costco wholesale sign up on the upper right, and it has the beige with the columns and the trellis in the middle as well?
correct, yep, and so
And
they're bringing that
They're
forward.
bringing all that forward,
Correct.
but where we currently have relief, now we have a single plane.
Right, it would be minor in nature compared to the existing relief now. The width of the columns,
Right.
essentially.
That space today, there's the 12 parking spots, and there is a little grass and some planting, and then
Right.
two emergency exits that come out of the building.
Right, right. And I just want to bring it up now from this standpoint, now that we've sort of got that cleared up, is once again, we are trying to get more texture and more relief in the buildings, and in this case, they don't have a lot of choice where it goes, but the end result is we lose what relief was there.
I would concur that it is greater today than what is proposed.
Sure.
Ms. Dean, the original proposal was to have the entire addition match the existing liquor store. Was I correct in your statement?
Right, so when they initially came in and submitted their plans to staff, the entire liquor store was one continuous plane of the concrete masonry unit on the bottom, and then the textured panel up above with the red stripe, continuing the length of the expansion, so this entire width here. We provided the architectural review tool to the applicant and noted some suggestions of change, and one of the suggestions was to bring the columns, piers, and canopy forward, and they provided that as a solution.
Sure.
Ms. Dean, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I just was agreeing.
The finish then on the addition, on the south side of the addition, is that going to be matching the west elevation, or is that going to transition back to what is the southern exposure of the existing liquor store? Do you know?
So the addition basically will end right about here, where the arrow is. So you'll still see some relief in the wall. I don't know if I understood you correctly.
I was asking the southern exposure of the addition.
Oh, it will match the existing building architecture, and let me take a look. Additional.
So essentially, the liquor store addition now is the steel that's wrapped around it.
Oh, there it is.
And it'll, did I miss that?
That's right there. So it does look like they bring the existing
Wrap it around, okay.
facade of the south wall of the existing liquor store to the south end of the addition as well.
Right, so it would have the same look here.
Right,
Correct.
okay.
Commissioner Singh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I go to Costco quite often. One of the concerns I have, and I had this concern when the original PUD came up before us, about the safety of pedestrians from the parking lot, the western parking lot, that same area that we're talking about with the expansion of the liquor store. People who park in that area, the western area, and walk towards either liquor store or the main entrance into the building. Sometimes you can just stand there and you look for 2 or 3 minutes, you'll see vehicles coming, they wrap around driveway that come through, vehicles come through, and then people are stopped in their tracks in the middle of the the striped walkway. I would strongly suggest that adequate striped walkways or that whole area should be striped for safety. It doesn't mean vehicles can't think, but what the pedestrians have the right of way. I mean, they have and vehicles have to wait on them.
Commissioner Singh, when I was there Sunday looking around, and actually where this addition is, I usually would typically park, because not a lot of people parked back there. I do know that is majority where their employees park. If you go to the gas station early before the club is open, that is where most people park. And I do know that and while I was looking around trying to get my bearings on Sunday, there was a fair amount of backup trying to get into the club.
They are proposing, if I may, Chair, they are proposing to keep a sidewalk in the location adjacent to the addition, which would provide entrance into the building or any of the side doors, so that
I
is
know
a
where the
benefit to the
sidewalk
site.
is, but you have several parking areas, 1, 2, 3. I'm talking the western side of the building, which is just across from where the liquor store is. And when people park there, like Saturday when it's busy, or the holidays, and even during the regular weekends in particular, when people park there and they have to walk to the liquor store or the main entrance, there could be problems there. And that's what I'm concerned about. I think everything else is okay in my opinion, but that we need to be proactive and stripe the area so that people have the right of way from the parking lot to the building, and they don't have to wait. I mean, and vehicles don't get the right of way. Vehicles wait on the pedestrians.
I think that's something that, as a staff, we can certainly talk with the applicant about.
Commissioner Beck.
If I can elaborate, this picture, I think, is pretty good at it. Can you blow this up on the screen?
Well, now there's a test.
Okay.
And she passed.
The southerly axis here, the southwest axis, off 141st, brings in quite a bit of traffic that comes up, has to make a right-hand turn, has to make a left-hand turn, ends up against the building. And I think what Commissioner Singh is talking about is currently the only real designated traffic for pedestrians is that walkway.
That's right.
And the one that goes to the north, to that one as well. There's like 2 designated areas there.
And here is the liquor store is here.
Right, and the liquor store entrance is back around to the south. And I think the comment basically is saying that since there's so much pedestrian traffic along that west side, below the existing walkway, is perhaps we should be looking at additional signage, striping, et cetera, to encourage vehicular traffic to yield to pedestrian traffic.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner. The thing is this, that people use that not only for the liquor store, for the main entrance too.
Sure.
Actually, Commissioners, you can't get at the liquor store from an external entrance. You have to go in the main entrance, and
Right.
then you're in the lobby, and then get into the liquor store. Commissioners, I'd like to clarify, typically, we haven't in the past added a condition saying, or are we just asking staff to look at this with the applicant, or?
Mr. Chair, that's all I'm asking staff to to be proactive.
Yeah, I
See and
understand.
make
I just
sure that
wanted to
we have adequate striping for pedestrians, period.
It is a difficult site. I do think parking is, at a premium near the front of the building, but you get over by the gas station and over there, there's always a fair amount of extra parking that wasn't even in use at Christmas. So I am personally going to probably lose the spot that I usually try to park at. But,
I think, Chair, I think there's adequate parking.
yeah.
The area with the gas pumps way down that end there, the western, the northwestern area is hardly find vehicles there. Employees park there, but there's always space there for additional people.
I agree that southwest entrance is a difficult entrance from a traffic and an accident waiting to happen, kind of speak, but Commissioner Benke, other questions?
I think that just to comment first and then my last question, I think, Burnhaven just went through quite a bit with CSM updating large chunks of the area, and they actively added walkways designated with different paving and
materials.
things like that. I think basically, really it's what Commissioner Singh talked about, in encouraging staff to encourage the applicants to learn from what their building has been doing over the couple of years it's been open and things, and where can we improve that experience for the customers. And my last question, I'm having trouble with the signage comment, that the number is going up, but the area is going down.
Right.
Are they replacing all the signs, or just,
So the city code has a limit on a single-use building on the number of signs that you can have. And in 2010, they had approval for 4 signs. They're asking for 5. And again, staff thought it was reasonable because they're reducing the size of this sign here. So overall, their sign square footage is decreasing, even though the number is increasing. This liquor store sales sign here, I could not find any record of a PUD approval for that. And the reason why is probably because of the size of the sign did not trigger a sign permit.
Sure.
As you can see in their proposal, it says liquor sales, so that increases the size of that sign. So that's probably why.
okay, so we have the sign above the front door, we have the new sign on the southwest corner, I think there's one on the southeast corner facing 42, and then there's one on the east.
There's
nothing on the
nothing on the
east.
east side.
So we have 3 Costco signs, and the liquor store is the 4th sign. Where's the 5th sign?
There's
That
one
basically
above
would-
the
this-
mechanics base that face due north, but there's not one on the east.
Oh, the north side, okay. Okay, so they're asking for a new liquor sales sign as well as the Costco sign being moved on the west side?
Correct.
Okay,
They essentially reduced the Costco sign on the west side in scope
Correct.
and generated enough square footage to
Okay.
allow the liquor signage. So the
So
square
they can
footage
grow.
went down, the number increased.
okay, so it actually exists now, it just isn't being counted currently.
Actually,
This
this
liquor-
sign is going to get smaller.
Correct, but
And-
it
yeah.
exists now. The liquor sign is small, but it exists now.
It
So even though
does.
the approval was for 4, we have 5.
The
But
way-
it's just now,
Yeah,
yeah.
The way the
Okay.
code reads, based off of the size of the sign,
Right.
may not trigger a permit.
The new one would.
Correct.
Got it. Okay, makes sense now.
Commissioner Levy?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to go back to the traffic flow in that southwest entry. It's not just pedestrian flow. I'm very concerned about that, but it's also the traffic, the automobile flow through that area. I've come in there a number of times, and it is awkward. I would hope that our traffic engineers can look at it as well. When we say staff, we're looking at traffic engineering as well as pedestrian engineering to take a look at how can that be made overall more functional.
And Commissioner Levy, just to clarify, typically a city traffic engineer is going to look about how traffic in the site affects the city, not internally. It does have to be laid out correctly so that particular site does not cause traffic issues on a city street. But our engineers would have nothing to do with the actual flow inside of a private property.
Right. Okay.
Okay. But thank you. Commissioners, any other questions? With that, then I will open the public hearing if we have no other questions of Ms. Dean. This is a public hearing, and at this time, I will open the public hearing and ask anyone in the audience that would like to step up and give us their thoughts. I would appreciate it. Can you give us your name and your address for the record?
Yes, my name is Chris Call. I'm with Landform Professional Services, 105 South 5th Avenue, Minneapolis. Here representing Costco.
Chris, real quick, I think Regina had mentioned this. Have you done this at other Costco's, this essential, the same type of addition, or is it just in Burnsville, or where all?
No, we're in the process of adding at least 5 or 6 of these to the
Okay.
existing stores in the metro area. We also are seeking approval for a new store in the city of Woodbury, and as part of that approval process, and as part of the architectural plans, they're proposing to have a liquor store of this size, the full size,
Okay. Thank you.
all based on market demand. I
Market
guess,
demand?
so, yeah.
Well, that's good. That's good. Commissioners, do you have any questions of the applicant? I know we have well, thank you very much. And seeing no one else, I will close the public hearing. And commissioners, unless I have read everybody incorrectly, I would stand for a motion.
So move, Mr. Chair. I beg to move that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the PUD amendment to allow for an addition to the Costco liquor store at 14050 Burnhaven Drive, subject to the following 3 conditions as presented by staff.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Singh, second by Commissioner Workman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Dean.
Thank you.
Great job, first presentation.
Thank you.
The last item on our agenda this evening is actually a continuation of our public hearing from the staff, change-making ordinance to our solar, a public hearing on our solar ordinance update. And the public hearing was to be closed today, but however, we are going to continue that public hearing. It will stay open until February 22nd, when staff will bring us those recommendations, and we will close the public hearing. So nothing I have to do with that item this evening. With that,
Mr. Chair, do
Commissioner
we need a
Singh.
motion to continue? It was,
Yeah, I was
don't-
wondering that as well. I was going to say the question, but.
I don't think so. I don't think,
believe so.
I double-checked with
Just
Deb this morning, or this
Okay.
afternoon, so. With that, that brings us to miscellaneous, and commissioners, do you have any updates? None? Staff, do you have any updates for us?
We just have the draft
Draft
for the next agenda.
meeting? With that, I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Moved by Commissioner Singh,
Second.
second by Commissioner Workman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. Thank you very much. I appreciate people in the audience this evening and those from home tuning in. Have a very nice evening. Thank you very much.